Tonight on CBC Vancouver News. 7 years later and thousands more lives lost to toxic drugs in BC.
This has gone on far too long.
It seems strange in a way to refer to something as a crisis when it has been going on for so many years.
The pleas for more treatment and a safe supply. Plus, higher grocery bills may be here to stay.
I don't think we're ever going to see across the board prices coming down, unfortunately.
Sobering news just as a major chain ends its no-name products price freeze. And Lululemon lawsuit. Nike takes the Vancouver-born athletic wear company to court, accusing it of patent infringement.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. Anita is away tonight. Almost 7 years after it was declared a public health emergency, BC's toxic drug crisis continues to kill a record number of people. 2022 was the second most deadly year on record so far. And as the CBC's Mira Baines tells us, solutions are hard to find in BC's overburdened medical system.
As she has for several years now, BC's chief coroner delivered the grim news.
BC has experienced an average of 6 deaths every day of every week for 2 years due to toxic drugs. And these deaths were preventable.
Slightly fewer people were killed by poison drugs last year than the record-setting numbers in 2021. But almost 7 years into the public health emergency, the toll is still devastating. At least 2,272 British Columbians lost their lives to toxic drugs in 2022. Only 34 fewer than the 2,306 deaths reported to the agency in 2021.
This has gone on far too long. It's an emergency, and it demands an urgent response that's commensurate with the scale of damage that we're seeing.
Buck says the province needs a comprehensive plan with everything from a regulated safe supply to effective patient-centered treatment. Most of the deaths involved middle-aged men inside private homes. The number of people under 19 dying from toxic drugs has also been growing, with fentanyl the leading cause. BC's Minister of Mental Health and Addictions admits the province needs a better system to track people through treatment and share waitlist information.
We do need better data, and that is a discussion I've been having with health authorities, with providers that we contract with, to look at how we ensure that we do have better tracking.
Surrey, Vancouver, and Greater Victoria reported the highest number of illicit drug toxicity deaths last year. But communities such as Kamloops, Abbotsford, Kelowna, and Prince George are also losing more people.
Prince George is the hub that we do have people, they may require help in the smaller community, they can't get help. So they all come down to Prince George, end up because we don't have enough adequate facility here. So they end up just dying, and this is not acceptable.
He's asking the province for a new treatment center in his community and a youth facility. It's one of many solutions that people across BC are hoping will save more lives. Mira Baines, CBC News, Vancouver.
The toxic drug death toll comes on the same day BC has decriminalized small amounts of illicit drugs. The goal is to reduce both stigma and keep people out of the criminal justice system. But some users feel underwhelmed by the new policy. And as John Hernandez tells us, there's concern over how weight limits will be enforced.
Scale, I got it on grams right now. That's 1.56 grams.
For Dave Ham, holding on to this rock of cocaine is no longer breaking any laws.
There's so many harms involved with the criminalization of substances.
As of Tuesday, small amounts up to 2.5 grams of cocaine, opioids, methamphetamines, and MDMA are decriminalized. A major provincial shift in drug policy, but at the Vancouver area network of drug users, the change has fallen flat.
2.5 cumulative. We're looking at somebody's morning get up and go, right? And so you want them every 2 hours going back and forth doing stuff all the time, like that doesn't make sense to me either, right?
Members here had advocated for higher thresholds, calls that were ultimately shot down by policymakers. Chief among concerns, small amounts means more trips to dealers.
Every time you go out, there's always a chance of something not going right. So the lesser times you have to do that, the better.
And there's also worry about how the limits could be enforced. Ryan Maddow worries those carrying more than what's allowed could end up getting their drugs confiscated.
When you have these thresholds of what people can carry, the police are still going to get out there to see who has these thresholds or more than these thresholds, and then so there's a good chance that maybe there will be more stoppages and more, police interactions.
The VPD says its officers will be acting in good faith when it comes to the weight of drugs. They won't carry scales and will use discretion. Police say their focus remains on traffickers, not users.
I can't see how decriminalization would increase any sort of criminalization of anyone.
The policy taking effect as BC's deadly opioid crisis reaches alarming highs. Drug advocates here hope decriminalization will open the door for safe supply.
I'm getting older, and I'd like to see something positive happen before I go.
The policy will remain in effect for at least 3 years. John Hernandez, CBC News, Vancouver.
Vancouver School Board trustees have voted unanimously to rename Lord Roberts Elementary School. As Justin McElroy explained to us yesterday, the West End School was named after a controversial British general who fought in the Boer War. It saw the British conquer and thwart African republics in the early 20th century using concentration camps. The VSB will now work on finding a new name. Community members hope it will focus on geography rather than another historical figure. Dozens of animals have been killed after a fire broke out at a rescue center in Surrey over the weekend. The Urban Safari Rescue Society says it lost 60 animals, from snakes and geckos to birds and turtles, after the blaze broke out Friday night. Operators say the building lost power, but at some point it came back on, causing a surge. Fire crews say a heating unit caught fire and smoldered for hours, filling one area with smoke and soot.
There were X's across the tanks where the animals didn't survive, and check marks, and it was numbing. It's heart-wrenching to have cared for these animals for so long. And some of these staff and volunteers, they live, eat, and breathe urban safari. They get attached to these animals.
Surviving animals are being cared for in temporary homes and are being checked for infections. The burned portion of the building will have to be completely rebuilt. Combs says they won't be able to reopen to visitors for months. The coroner's inquest into the 2019 suicide of a Vancouver police officer has now finished. Constable Nicole Chan filed a complaint against a VPD sergeant who was her superior, alleging sexual assault and extortion 2 years before she took her own life. Today, the VPD's Director of Labour and Employee Relations testified about the force's policy on personal relationships in the workplace. The CBC's Karen Larson has been following the inquest closely. Karen, what are the main takeaways from the final day, day 7?
Well, Dan, typically in a coroner's inquest, the witnesses that come at the end, they present big picture evidence. They weren't personally connected to the death in any way. So today we heard from Christine McLean, she's the VPD's Director of Labour, on what the force's policies are on reporting personal relationships within the VPD. This is relevant to Chan's case because she did allege, as you said, sexual assault and extortion against a supervising sergeant, David Van Patten. Now, in that complaint, Chan alleged that Van Patten warned her against telling the police psychologist about their relationship and let Chan know that as her supervising officer, he had access to all her personnel files, including doctor's reports. So today we heard from Christine McLean that the VPD updated those policies in 2021, 2 years after Chan died by suicide. McLean said the expectation is that both parties in a personal workplace relationship at the VPD declare the relationship to their superiors. The VPD policy also says that other members of the force who have knowledge of a personal workplace relationship that could represent a conflict, for example, people of differing ranks, that third-party person also report the relationship.
So what comes next in all of this, Karen?
Well, the inquest jury is out and it will return with a ruling on the official cause and time of death, and possibly with recommendations to improve policies and procedures that were examined during testimony, although the jury isn't compelled to make those recommendations. As well, there's a civil suit that has been filed by the family of Nicole Chan against the VPD, Van Patten. It also names the Vancouver Police Union, the Vancouver Police Board, among others, alleging that their actions contributed to Chan's death. We'll be watching to see what happens with that.
All right, Karen Larson, thanks very much. A Surrey man has now been sentenced to 1 day in jail after time served for assaulting passengers on a BC Transit bus in Abbotsford last April. David Allen Lucas had pleaded guilty to charges of assault and assault with a weapon. The video shows Lucas yelling profanities at other passengers and eventually hitting a man. Fellow riders had to restrain him until police arrived. At the time of his arrest, police said he had assaulted 4 passengers who all had minor injuries. He was also sentenced to 1 year probation and a 5-year weapons ban. The province was in Surrey to talk about their recent investments in transit today.
Without question, the most significant and exciting development of 2022 was moving the Surrey-Langley SkyTrain forward. Surrey-Langley SkyTrain is the first new rapid transit investment south of the Fraser River in almost 30 years.
Minister Fleming also addressed the Broadway SkyTrain extension. He says when it is built, transit users will be able to go to Langley, from Langley to Arbutus Street in Kitsilano. While those pledges were being made, bus drivers in the Fraser Valley may go on strike as early as Thursday after the union representing them issued 72-hour strike notice. QP 561 strike notice affects First Transit, which runs in Abbotsford, Chilliwack, and the surrounding region. As of 3 p.m. Thursday, bus drivers will stop collecting fares. Service withdrawals are set for February 27th and 28th, and if a deal cannot be reached by then, further job action is expected. WestJet says it will be cancelling direct flights between 3 Canadian cities and Europe this summer. Those cities are Vancouver, Toronto, and Halifax. It's still unclear which European airports WestJet flies to from YVR will be affected. The airline says the suspension is temporary and it hopes to resume the transatlantic crossings next year. It blames staffing levels and inflation. The swoosh is going after the yoga pant, in a manner of speaking. Nike is suing Lululemon, accusing the company of patent infringement. In a complaint filed in the U.S. federal court in Manhattan, Nike says it suffered economic harm and irreparable injury from Lululemon's sale of its Bliss Feel, Charge Feel Low, Charge Feel Mid, and Strong Feel footwear. The company says the patents at issue concern textile and other elements. Commuters across the Lower Mainland ran into some very slippery conditions this morning. Two sounds you do not want to hear. Video posted online shows a bus in Coquitlam sliding as it approaches that intersection, slamming into a white Tesla and avoiding a few other cars as it was forced to carry on. Amy Bell, who was up early providing the traffic notes on the early ed, was listening to all of those complaints and wondering, why did people go out?
There was a lot going on.
Oh,
there was a lot going on.
Heard it. Oh, dear. What do we get now?
Not as bad, but it was a dramatic day.
Okay,
in fact, we'll take a look at the time lapse, and you can see we saw the snow arriving about 4:35 this morning, and we weren't sure how long it was going to last. Turns out it was many hours. It was well after, I'd say, about 10 o'clock that we saw the majority of it easing off, but it did accumulate on all of those roads and sidewalks and bike paths. Definitely looking a lot better for this evening and for tomorrow. It is still cold out there, though. We're still looking at 0 in Abbotsford, just 1 in Pitt Meadows, 2 at the airport, and that's about as hot as we got today, unfortunately. We will continue with those cooler temperatures in the overnights, and we do have a slight chance of some showers or perhaps those wet flurries once again arriving overnight and very early tomorrow morning. What we're really going to see tomorrow, though, is a big change in the temperature. So we'll gradually start to see things warming up. We'll get up to about 5 or 6 degrees, and then we'll brighten up to some sunshine in the afternoon. Thursday, we catch a little break between systems. We'll see a nice mix of sun and cloud, high of 7. You'll be like, snow? What was that? It never happened. We get back into the rain, though, so that's the next wave of precipitation. That's coming on Friday, and we'll see a high around 8 degrees. So once we get through tonight and early tomorrow morning, really start to warm up and just get ready to get wet.
Again.
I make that sound so exciting, don't I?
Please tell me less. Thanks, Amy.
You're welcome.
Prices continue to climb at the grocery store. Could we see some relief, or will we pay even more? Just ahead, we'll go down to the food aisle to see what's in store for this year. Thanks to everyone watching our commercial-free live stream tonight. Good to have you here. Debate about bike lanes has been brewing in Toronto's Midtown neighborhood. But as Sean Jefford tells us, a municipal committee has just endorsed a recommendation to make them permanent.
The lanes have been piloted since 2021 between Bloor and Davisville. City staff say cycling trips in the corridor are up nearly 60%, and the lanes should be made permanent. But that doesn't sit well with a number of residents who say congestion has been a problem. Resident Trevor Townsend challenged Deputy Mayor Jennifer McKelvey to look at the gridlock.
We've got 2 lanes and a major artery going north and south in our neighborhood, and we've got congestion, and we've got serious concerns about response times with our fire and emergency crews.
Alicia Mitchell says the congestion caused by the pilot held up an ambulance trying to get her to hospital last May. She says the pilot isn't working.
Lives should prevail over bike lanes. It's really, really important. I love biking. In the past, I've done my biking. I'm not here to object to biking, but there's a time and a place, and it needs to be set up for success.
But a number of deputants also spoke up in favor of making the lanes permanent. Marjorie Nickel says the bike lanes have made the community safer. Before them, she was too afraid to ride her bike on Yonge.
For the past several months, I have been able to safely go shopping and dining in a neighborhood that I have avoided in the past.
Aubrey and her brother Nick asked the committee to adopt the plan.
Pretty soon I'll be graduating to a bigger bike, and I won't be able to ride on the sidewalks. I'm excited but also scared. I will be on the streets with cars and trucks. I'm with only a helmet to protect me. I don't think that's a safe idea. So I'm asking you today to please support bike lanes in Midtown and all over Toronto.
Allison Stewart of Cycle Toronto says expanding the cycling network will benefit the entire city.
These projects are great examples of what Toronto can accomplish when we prioritize making our streets safer, more enjoyable to visit, and more accessible for people of all ages and abilities.
Deputy Mayor Jennifer McKelvey says city staff are recommending that the lanes become permanent, but she acknowledged that there may need to be changes.
But it is important that we do continue to listen to residents and maybe see if there are some areas that can be approved along the corridor. But this project is important because it is contributing to our cycling network plan.
The committee's recommendations will next go before City Council on February 6th for further debate. Sean Jefford, CBC News, Toronto.
Like many Canadians, you may still be doing double takes at the grocery store. Food costs have gone up considerably, something that the grocery chain Loblaws also noticed. So before the holidays, it announced it would freeze prices on its line of no-name products. Well, that freeze is thawing today. This comes as food inflation is expected to grow. The annual food price report predicts this year the typical family grocery bill will top $16,000, over $1,000 more than last year. One UBC professor says right now, though, he's looking for things to stabilize.
For example, meat was down, and even dairy products were down, but vegetable prices were up. So it's kind of all over the place, which is hard to understand. So, overall there was inflation, but some categories are down. So I think when we see the Stats Canada report coming out shortly here for what's happened in January, we'll have a much better idea. And I'm hoping we're going to see, everything flattening out as we're expecting. In a typical year before the pandemic or before this inflation, most grocery items would go for many, many months without changing the price. And then they'd have a bit of a jump up. So maybe over the course of a year, they would jump up twice, and maybe they would be inflating, 2-3%. So that's where we have to get back to. I don't think we're ever going to see across the board prices coming down, unfortunately.
Grocery shoppers we spoke to out and about today say it is still a grind on their wallets.
Well, I've very clearly noticed an increase in price. Like going to the store and buying a couple items, it feels like I'm spending $50 for a handful of items.
I think it's also for families, it has been very difficult. And yeah, we're trying to choose like the stores or that have like more affordable prices.
I have to plan my weekly menus and all, like what I will prepare today, tomorrow and all, and like how I will considerably using the vegetables and protein-based stuffs. I'm a vegetarian, so like of course getting vegetables is expensive now, especially the fruits as well.
I rarely buy meat, lots of rice and beans, but I am a student, so I already shop pretty cheaply.
A CBC News and Sports investigation is revealing that dozens of coaches have been charged with sexual offenses across this country. It comes as athletes are calling for an inquiry into sports abuse. Jamie Strachan has the story.
Every night, hundreds of thousands of Canadian children can be found at the rink, pool, or field. Sports are supposed to be fun and safe, and that's mostly the case, but many are acknowledging glaring gaps.
The world of sport in general is still in crisis.
Recently, there have been a flurry of announcements and promises by the federal government pledging to make sports safer in Canada.
Today, we are announcing two important measures to make our sports system safer for all athletes.
I'm willing to consider anything because my priority is really making sure that all athletes are safe.
Many of the issues exist away from the spotlight, at the local grassroots level, where 99% of children participate in sport. A CBC Sports and News investigation found that in the last 4 years alone, 83 coaches have been charged with a sexual offense against a minor across 16 different sports.
We don't pay attention to where the 99% of participants are playing, whether it's schools, parks and recreation, or local clubs, and so it becomes a blind spot for us.
Marco De Bueno is the president of Canadian Tire Jumpstart Charities, one of the largest youth sports charities in Canada.
There's only so much the national body can do because they don't have boots on the ground in local communities to be able to administer anything with substance at the grassroots level. So it creates all these different layers, and if someone is really interested in taking advantage of a child, they will find their way through the cracks.
I want to see us dribbling.
De Bueno and others say safe sport in Canada is a collection of promises without real resources to get education and training to the local level. And with national organizations' lack of jurisdiction and focus on elite athletes, safe sport is then pushed to provincial organizations. Even larger ones like Alberta Basketball are struggling.
We have the beginnings of a proper safe sport system, but we need the governments to step up and really put their money where their mouths are and not just pay it lip service.
All of this has many in Canada's sports community calling for a public inquiry, possibly a chance to make sports at all levels in this country safer. Canada's sport minister told CBC that at this point, she's not committed to doing that. Jamie Strachan, CBC News, Toronto.
COVID-19 exposed many things in Canada's long-term care homes. Now, new national standards are being released to address those problems, but they aren't mandatory. Marina von Stackelberg has more.
His smile was contagious.
Eddie Callisto Tavares lost her father during a COVID-19 outbreak at the Maples long-term care home in Winnipeg. Before her dad died, she was granted special access to care for him. She witnessed what other families did not see. One night, the outbreak got so severe, paramedics were called in to help the sick residents.
They were crying out that they were thirsty. And I would just be compelled sometimes to just walk down the hall and do nothing but say, help is coming, knowing that there was very little help coming.
More than 17,000 residents have died in Canada's long-term care homes because of COVID-19. Their deaths prompted new national standards aimed at improving care.
If these standards were in place before, I believe we would not be leading the world in having the worst performance in long-term care.
They cover everything from infection control, emergency planning, and staffing, but also how to prevent falls and limit the use of restraints and antipsychotic medications. But all of these are voluntary.
I'm worried that these standards will just sit on the shelf.
It's up to the provinces and territories who are responsible for long-term care to act on them.
We'll take a look at them. I have, in the process of reviewing them, I have no interest in watering down what Ontario is already doing.
Ontario maintains it has a high-quality system after the military was called in to deal with outbreaks there. Those who work inside the homes say Ottawa should make the new standards law.
We strongly feel that they're going to be meaningless if they're just simply left up to the goodwill of service providers.
The federal government won't say if it will require provinces to make these standards mandatory in order to get more funding.
We are looking forward to sign agreements with provinces and territories to see how they can use those dollars to further meet these new standards.
Ottawa has set aside $3 billion to help provinces and territories bring in these new standards for long-term care homes. But the Parliamentary Budget Officer estimates much more is needed, nearly $14 billion per year, and that's on top of what is already being spent. Marina von Stackelberg, CBC News, Ottawa.
The latest numbers from Statistics Canada show the economy grew slightly in November, but as Scott Peterson tells us, this comes as interest rates go up.
They tell the story of two different stories, really. One of an industry trying to bounce back after 2 years of being held back with COVID restrictions, and then the other, industries being held back by those 8 interest rate hikes that we've seen from the Bank of Canada. So we are seeing growth, 0.1% growth in the month of November. It's not much, but it is something to end the year out. And we're seeing, for example, let's take a look at some of the numbers that Statistics Canada is putting out this morning. And this is the broadest measurement of our gross domestic product, our economy. Air transport, for example, no surprise here. More Canadians continuing to fly, up about 4.6% just for the month and about 100% over the whole year. Hotel and motel services, no surprise again, up about 17% year over year. Strong demand for people getting out and traveling. Agriculture, also a strong industry. Good bumper crop this year from out west, 31% increase year over year. But on the flip side, those disadvantaged, we're seeing construction again contracting, down 1.6%. There's no more real renovations going on. Home improvements is down as well. Also, the retail trade is down across the board, with general merchandise sales down about 1.6%. And also there's a preliminary estimate that Stats Canada does for the month of December, saying it is pretty much flat. And if that is the case, we're seeing that the end fourth quarter growth for the year at 1.6%. That's pretty much in line with what the Bank of Canada was suggesting that would be happening at the end of the year. So growth is growth. The economy is definitely slowing, because that's a bit of a fraction from what it was just a quarter before. But the economy continuing to go despite those 8 rate hikes and high inflation that we're continuing to see in the country. Scott Peterson, CBC News, Toronto.
Everyone has a past. Modi also has it.
After the break, India tries to ban a documentary critical of its prime minister. That's next.
We're directly across the harbor from downtown Vancouver in the oldest section of North Vancouver. And this is one of the most enduring businesses in the area. Started in 1906, and through good times and bad times, it's still going strong. It's a hardware store, and I'm in heaven. Hi.
Hi.
How are you this morning?
Fine, thank you.
Good. Listen, I think you've got some marvelous stuff in here, and I know what that is, but I've never seen one of those for so long. It's a stove, obviously.
Right, yeah.
Now, why would somebody buy that today?
Well, they need them for their camp. You know,
Oh, it's a camp stove.
It's a camp stove, and then you can cook on the top of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, what about that thing? That's an odd-looking
That's
thing.
the vacuum washer.
A vacuum washer?
And
I've
it's
never
for
seen
doing
one.
doing your laundry.
Right. How did that work?
Well, you just gotta keep turning it like that, and that just bring the suction. Pulls
Inside a
the cloth out.
bucket?
Yeah, inside a bucket or a
I
pail.
see. Right, right. And I notice over here you've got these old Aladdin lamps.
They give you good light, you know.
Yeah, great
and you
light.
can even adapt them for electrical if you want.
Oh, I
yeah,
see.
you can
Right.
put a special socket inside of them.
Now, you've been here quite a long time,
Yes,
haven't you?
right, yes.
How long?
46.
Wow,
Yeah,
1946?
46, right, yeah.
You've seen a lot of changes in the hardware
Well,
business.
a little there, yes.
What kind of unusual things do people ask for here?
Well, some of the products, you know, like a lot of the stuff we have is all bulk. A lot of stuff coming out now is all package deals.
Quite a difference, isn't there?
Quite a difference. Well, a lot of people want to get 3 or 4 screws instead of having to buy a packet of 10, you know. So we can give them whatever they want. We noted for having a lot of oddball stuff here.
You know, I noticed this ladder here.
Well, it's very handy just to get of anything that's up on the shelf here.
Ah, yes, yes, yes. Makes sense. Pretty convenient,
yeah.
too.
Convenient for anything at the top or any other level, anywhere in the store.
Yeah. Is this ladder as old as the store?
Yes, that's as old as the store.
Really?
Yeah.
You don't see that sort of thing
No,
anymore?
not very much.
Well, everybody has them down. All the material is down now. The products
Yes, most
are down.
of it is,
yeah. Now, let's go down the back here. Now, what's this? This looks like a wall of nuts and bolts here.
Yes, assorted carriage bolts, machine bolts.
Is that a machine bolt here?
This
is a machine
That's
bolt.
the machine bolt.
And you got a nut for this?
Yes, here's the nut for that.
3/8, right. Just put that on there. Oh, it's too small. It's a half-inch.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
No, that's a half-inch right there. Here we go. There, that fits. Good, good. Well, I've enjoyed it today, and I appreciate very much our tour.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
For coming.
You're the expert. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
You know, I get the feeling that something's watching me in here. Oh, well.
We're sharing really important information with the public, and I feel like this is exactly what our job is, especially as the public broadcaster, especially in morning radio. That's incredibly important.
Many businesses are struggling to find workers. That includes the airline industry, dealing with plenty of other challenges as well. Airlines large and small are trying to cope with a shortage of pilots. And as Nisha Patel shows us, there's no easy fix.
Zona Savic is training to become a commercial pilot, and demand for grads like her is sky high. Amid mass layoffs in the airline industry during the pandemic, many young people chose other careers.
The pandemic kind of delayed things a little bit, but I did end up starting my flight training.
Soaring training costs and low starting wages are also discouraging. Tack on a wave of retirements, and it adds up to a serious labor crunch.
It's a cyclical business or industry, and when it's in its downturn, sometimes it maybe not be attractive for some.
The number of commercial pilots' licenses issued by Transport Canada has plunged nearly 80%, from more than 1,100 in 2019 to about 240 last year.
We're in talks with our partners in ways that we can broaden our school.
Big carriers like Air Canada and WestJet offer more attractive salary and benefits, so they have fewer problems hiring, leaving small airlines desperate for qualified candidates.
We haven't had enough pilots for a long time.
That dynamic is one that Sunwing Airlines says is partly to blame for its holiday season disruptions.
All the management staff is flying the planes now because they have no choice. So there's a huge problem.
And as the country sees new low-cost airlines expand, so does the need for more pilots.
All needing pilots, all sucking pilots from all the other operators.
Experts say the personnel problem could weigh on the industry, but with years of training required, there's no quick fix.
You can't become a 737 pilot in a few months. Like, you need to gain some experience first.
The industry is trying to recruit new candidates as well as offering incentives to draw more women like Savic.
It's definitely something I'd like to do for the rest of my life or career. It's just definitely driven by a lot of passion.
So the lack of pilots could add further turbulence to travel at a time when airlines are already struggling to meet customer demand. Nisha Patel, CBC News, Toronto.
South of the border now, the Biden administration says it will soon end the country's COVID-19 emergencies that were declared nearly 3 years ago. That move coming in May will affect how the federal government deals with the ongoing pandemic at the national level. Magda Gabrisalasa takes a look at the change and the political reaction so far.
The White House is signaling it's ready to move forward from the worst of the pandemic, ready to put an end to the COVID-19 national emergency and public health emergency orders that have been in place since early 2020. Now, these orders have allowed for free vaccines, tests, and treatments to be available. Some of those may not be free anymore as these declarations wind down and end on May 11th. And that will all depend on a number of things, like whether people have private insurance or are covered by federal or state coverage. So some people will have to pay out of pocket for at-home tests and treatment. The White House says announcing all this now means hospitals, healthcare workers, and all Americans have time to adjust. But House Republicans are saying the orders should come to an end now.
President Biden has still been operating under both the national public health emergency and the COVID emergency. And a long time ago, they should have ended. And as Republicans, we said we would end these emergency declarations to open the country back up again.
Now, there's already a vote scheduled for today on a bill calling for the end of these orders. And that's the reason Republicans are taking credit for this recent announcement from the Biden administration. But Democrats are saying no way.
Our reaction is that this was likely the outcome that the administration was working toward. We believe in a path to do this. We want to make sure that our communities aren't impacted, that our community hospitals aren't impacted adversely by any decisions that they would make.
Now, this goes on even as COVID continues to kill, on average, more than 500 people a day in the U.S. And even as the World Health Organization says COVID-19 is not over, that it's still a global health emergency. Magda Ghebreselassie, CBC News, Washington.
Authorities in India are scrambling to stop the screening of a BBC documentary on Prime Minister Narendra Modi's early years as a politician. The film examines his role during the anti-Muslim riots in Modi's home state more than 20 years ago. Critics see the ban as another attempt by the government to silence criticism. Salima Shivji has more.
They may not have seen the BBC documentary in which their prime minister's past is front and center, but most here have an opinion on it anyway.
So BBC is trying to give a judgment. You have no one to tell me that, these are your findings. Why should I trust you?
All rejecting the BBC's work.
Everyone has a past. Modi also has it.
The documentary examines the role India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi had in the communal riots that rocked Gujarat 20 years ago, when he was chief minister of that state. Mob violence erupted, killing more than 1,000 people, mostly Muslims. The BBC special cites an unnamed former British diplomat.
There was a culture of impunity that created the environment for the violence to take place. That, undoubtedly, came from Modi.
India's government reacted swiftly to the film.
We think this is a propaganda piece designed to push a particular discredited narrative,
using emergency powers to block it from airing.
The BBC documentary may be blocked here in India, but that means next to nothing. Links are circulating all over, shared on social media, and students across the country are fighting to organize screenings on campuses.
Police have detained some student activists trying to watch the film. And in Mumbai, students had to get past loud protesters chanting shame on the BBC and brave stiff opposition from university officials. But they stood strong and found a way. The student organizers saw it as their duty.
When the authority, the government decides that something you shouldn't be watching, which disturbs them, definitely, primarily, it becomes your responsibility to watch it first.
Pure censorship that's backfiring, this journalist says, with more people drawn to the doc with all the attention it's getting.
So my first reaction was a mixture of, they haven't done their homework, how foolish this is, because it's only for a UK domestic audience. I think it's given India a bad image among those who follow this.
Ram is spearheading a challenge to the Supreme Court that will be heard later this week. His side will argue the Indian government has no place blocking access to a documentary, particularly one that was only available in the UK in the first place. Salima.
Nearly a year since Russia's brutal invasion, its forces continue to meet Ukrainian resistance. But it's not just Ukraine's shoulders who are showing defiance. Far away from the front lines, Chris Brown looks at the resiliency of ordinary Ukrainians facing relentless missile strikes and rolling blackouts.
In Ukraine, darkness is the new adversary, part of Russian tactics to deny Ukrainians the necessities of life. So with the power grid under attack, even at Kyiv's main heart hospital, saving electricity is essential.
Sometimes we stop operation if we know about new rocket attacks. Добрий ранок.
As our CBC crew watched surgeon Boris Tudorov perform open heart surgery, the power thankfully stayed on. But time and again, he and his team have had to do the most delicate procedures using only flashlights.
When we have alarm, we continue our operation. Last time, when we lose electricity, 10 patients were on operation room. But we continue operation and we finish all operations without complications.
He says they all feel like soldiers with scalpels, innovating to deal with the enemy's attacks.
We adapted for the situation and we continue to work. And we will work as long as it will be necessary.
Vladimir Putin may be trying to break Ukraine's spirit to resist, but it's not working. Kyiv's exposition center, with its ice rink, food stalls, and games booths, is still open most nights. Even in the bitter cold, it's full of people. Generators keep the lights on and the food hot. At the shooting gallery, not surprisingly, look who the target is.
If we are not going to have a little bit of fun during this situation, we will be just all lose our, I don't know, our feelings, you know, we will be just destroyed.
Few places have been damaged more by Russia's war than the Kyiv suburb of Bucha. But not far from the killing ground, ruined bridges are rising again. Homes are being repaired, new ones constructed, and the rhythms of life are returning. We had a comfortable life, but it's harder than it was before. We're getting used to it, she said. We can't use the generator all the time. It's expensive, 1,000 hryvnias, or 40 Canadian dollars a day, she said. International help has made a difference. Money from Kazakhstan helped pay for this so-called yurt of invincibility, where people can stay warm and charge their phones.
We are unbreakable, and I think we will manage to finish this winter.
Russia's war in this country is grinding on, and the threat of missile attacks remains constant. But Ukrainians have turned a potentially catastrophic situation this winter into a manageable one, in a striking demonstration of collective resilience. Chris Brown, CBC News, in Bucha.
The culture's relationship to Pamela Anderson was to treat her as an attractive punchline.
She's an international superstar thanks to Home Improvement, Baywatch, and even Borat. But now Pamela Anderson is turning the focus inward in a new documentary. It includes some startling allegations from her early life on Vancouver Island. That's next.
My name is Thomas.
We are Dragon Squad.
We had difficulty to make the society believe that as women we can actually conduct and operate on the event security. So we had issues. Most time when you talk to a client, the client will say, all females, no, this part of it, you guys cannot handle it. I prefer to use female. physical, the body size, since my team is all about plus size ladies. If you have the plus size body, that's cool for me. Before I now talk about your passion and other qualification of yours.
Stargazers with the right equipment have had quite the treat as of late, thanks to a green comet visible in the night sky. The comet, which emits a rare green hue, has just rounded the sun and is heading back out far beyond the solar system. But don't worry, it should pass close to the Earth on February 1st, but it won't be back for about 50,000 years, so set your watch. NASA plans to observe the comet with its James Webb Space Telescope, which could provide clues as to how our solar system began.
We're going to be looking for the fingerprints of given molecules that we can't access from the ground. So things that are in our own Earth's atmosphere, like water, carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, methane. We're going to be looking for those fingerprints in this comet and be able to study things that we haven't been able to see.
Now, at the moment, you can only see it through binoculars or a telescope, but the comet should brighten in the coming days, which may make it visible to the naked eye. Very cool. Amy Bell joins us with the full BC forecast. Have you seen the green comet yet?
I've not seen the green comet.
Neither
They
have I.
start training Bruce Willis to go up in the space shuttle, though. I think we should
we can do Armageddon again.
be a little suspicious.
Yeah, slightly. That there was a sequel. Yeah, that's going to get some
That's
comments.
the real bad news.
That's the real tragedy. I don't want to see that with a telescope or anything else.
Fair enough.
There we go. Ouch.
It'll be fascinating. That comet is amazing.
Yes,
I would love
indeed
to
it
see
is. What is fascinating about our next forecast?
Okay, so it's going to warm up. So that is a good thing because it's been very cold the last few days. And yes, big shocker this morning, we saw snow. It wasn't a huge shocker. I think just that it lingered for so long this morning. We had that cold air mass just park right over us. And with that ground also is cold, we just kept it well through the morning commute. We do have a chance of some wet flurries, especially at those higher elevations overnight and very early tomorrow morning. And then we'll warm up enough. We'll see it transitioning over to showers, and then we will head back into some sunshine. So we can see this cool air mass making its way further into Alberta, and then this next wave of precipitation, that's going to hit us by the end of the week. So Friday, Saturday looking very wet. That will move in, but with those temperatures much warmer, it'll just be straight rain that we're looking at. For tomorrow, though, we'll still see some flurries up in Whistler, of course. Further out in the Fraser Valley, we have a greater chance of that wet, wintry mix early in the morning before it does move over to rain. Some showers in Victoria for the morning. Very windy for the area around Tofino tomorrow as well, with some sunshine late in the day. We do have a winter storm warning still up tonight for the areas around Prince George. We'll see some gusty winds and a fair amount of accumulation still. So keep that in mind if you're doing any traveling, and especially early tomorrow morning. Cool and snowy for Dease Lake, very wet for Prince Rupert, and we will see some sunshine for Port Hardy. We'll see snow in the morning for the Kootenays, and then we'll see some sunshine in the afternoon. And for us, what we're looking at, as I mentioned, so we'll start off with a cooler air mass. We'll drop down to about 2 degrees overnight and early tomorrow morning. So that's when we see that chance of some flurries, wet flurries, especially up, say, SFU Mountain. But then we will see it transitioning over to showers, and then we will get into some sunshine. Mix of sun and cloud on Thursday, high of 7, and even warmer for Friday and Saturday, but very wet. We'll see rain on and off throughout the day, and then tapering off to showers on Sunday.
Okay, we'll keep an eye on it. Thanks, Amy.
You're welcome.
The Juno nominations have now been unveiled, and there will be plenty of BC representation at this year's awards.
'Cause when we fight, you give me space and I communicate. And for a while I thought that's what I should appreciate. Maybe I was holding on to what I thought you were.
Lauren Spencer Smith is among the nominees for Artist of the Year. Spencer Smith is from Vancouver Island. Other British Columbians up for some hardware are Burnaby's own Michael Bublé and Mission's Carly Rae Jepsen. Alberta's Nickelback will be inducted into the Canadian Music Hall of Fame this year as well. In an unfiltered attempt to reclaim her own story, BC's Pamela Anderson is detailing her childhood trauma and rise to fame in a new documentary, Pamela, A Love Story. Eli Glasner on how a leaked tape changed everything.
With a new documentary,
I put myself in crazy situations and survived them.
Book and home reno show.
Welcome to Arcady.
Pamela Anderson is back and telling her own story. The director of the new documentary says a big push came from her own family.
I don't think Pamela would have done this without her sons. They really were tired of their mother being misunderstood.
In both the book and documentary, Anderson describes growing up poor in small-town British Columbia and details allegations she was sexually assaulted and raped at a young age. That's contrasted with the empowerment she says she felt finding success at Playboy and on Baywatch, until a private sex tape was stolen and then released.
It's not funny. It's not funny. This is devastating to us.
At the height of her fame, the culture's relationship to Pamela Anderson was to treat her as an attractive punchline.
This writer says Anderson is part of a larger trend of how society is revisiting how women were treated.
We've been talking about the way that we spoke about women in the early 2000s and in the 90s and for, as long as I can remember. For a long time. That didn't stop a production company from making this TV show.
What the hell is this?
The show is Pam and Tommy, last year's fictionalized retelling of the sex tape scandal. In a recent interview with Variety, Anderson tried to laugh it off.
Assholes.
But documentary director Ryan White was there and saw how Anderson reacted when the show premiered.
Whenever it would come up where you could see her viscerally want to escape.
While experts say the industry still has lessons to learn, White isn't worried about Anderson.
Pamela survived some crazy shit and has come out on the other end, and she'll turn 56 years old this year. Pamela's not old. Pamela has a lot of life ahead of her.
One she's sharing on her own terms. Eli Glasner, CBC News, Toronto.
Alec Baldwin is now formally charged with involuntary manslaughter in connection with the deadly shooting on his movie set. Baldwin was holding a gun during rehearsals back in 2021 when that gun went off, killing cinematographer Helena Hutchinson. The film's weapons specialist, Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, has also been charged. Both say they will fight the charges.
It's something that I eat when I miss home.
It's comfort food, and as you can see, draws quite a crowd. After the break, a look at a pop-up serving the popular dish, congee. Stick around.
It's official. There won't be another terrace season on this beloved patio, and it's hitting the neighborhood hard.
It was like our second home at one point. I was doing there almost every week, I should say. So it's funny to know that it's going to be closed. It's an institution. It's part of the history. It's part of our lives, our student lives, especially when you studied at UQAM, just next to it.
It bothers me because I think it's a cool place and there's not a lot of space like that in the city. A lot of these places are closing. It's not the same.
The news was announced in a post on the bar's Facebook account, but no reason was given for why. The owner did not respond to requests for comment. The bar had closed just before the pandemic for renovations and never reopened to the public. This part of Saint Denis used to be the center of student nightlife, but merchants say since the pandemic, that's changed. The owner of this bar a few steps away says his bar is also struggling, and he says he's not the only one.
There's not a lot of people in the street. The worker never came back in the building. Maybe for students, because actually all the beer and the food are more expensive because, you know, prices are higher and higher. Maybe people has just decided maybe to stay home, to stay to the residence.
The local city councillor says it's sad to hear the business is closing. He says the city is trying various ways to support merchants in the area, and more is coming.
We already put a lot of money and work together with La Société de Développement Commercial. There's an announcement really soon about activities to develop l'achalandage on the Saint-Denis.
He says the city is hoping there will be a new owner who will respect the heritage building and help revitalize the area. Jennifer Yoon, CBC News, Montreal.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
On March 2nd, join CBC Vancouver's Michelle Elliott and a panel of top UBC experts at the UBC Med Talks, a hybrid event on the topic of healthy aging. Register at alumni.ubc.ca and never miss a special programming series, event, or contest. Subscribe to CBC Vancouver's e-newsletter at cbc.ca/Vancouver inbox and keep connected with us.
It's a simple dish of rice and lots of water, loved by many Asian cultures. Congee. And yesterday, to celebrate the tail end of Chinese New Year, a local chef shared a piece of her heritage by taking the humble dish to the next level. Hundreds of hungry diners pulled up a chair in Chinatown for Chef Desiree Lowe's one-day pop-up. And yes, we were there.
I'm actually the chef today for the congee pop-up at Chinatown Barbecue. Congee for me is a comfort food, right? It's like chicken noodle soup to other people. For me, congee is like on a cold day, I want to have a bowl of congee. And sometimes it could be like, 40 degrees out and I still want a bowl of congee. It's something that I eat when I miss home. I wanted to be able to give back to my community, and it's the midst of Chinese New Year. So it's a good way to bring everybody to Chinatown during Chinese New Year, and a way for me to show this congee concept that I developed with Janice Yu at Fresh Ideas Start Here. And we had such a huge hit when we first came out. So I want to be able to bring that to more of a general population. So I've been cooking for 18 years, and I cooked in New York City, and I cooked in Los Angeles, and I cooked in Vancouver. For all 18 years, I feel like I'm just an unsung hero in the background, just in the kitchen, just cooking and cooking and cooking, and being able to compete on Top Chef Canada Season 10 this last summer gave me the platform to be able to let people know who I am. And then now today, with everybody coming out to Chinatown Barbecue to eat my food, my congee, I feel like I made it. I'm getting teary-eyed now. there's a lot more to Asian cuisine, you know, and there's congee is just not something that you eat off the street. I feel like there's something that has novelty to it, and it has history to it, and then you can add so much to just a base and make it fun, and make it like colorful, make it like flavorful. It doesn't have to be just rice and water or rice and soup. It could be a lot more than that. It means the world. I mean, it just be able to have so many people come out to see me, to support me. I mean, it just means like I made it, and that I'm able to share my heart, my love, and my palate to people who come here today.
Great idea, and that looks very good. I want some right now. Thanks for being with us tonight on CBC Vancouver News at 6. You can watch this show on CBC Gem, our free app, as well as on YouTube, Instagram, and of course our website, cbc.ca/BC. Janella Hamilton will have your late local news right here at 11 o'clock after the National. So please tune in before you turn in. Good night.